Okay, today we're going to look at how to bottle or can beetroot. And I grew these in the garden and pulled them out a couple of days ago. And all I did was basically wash them and cut the tops and the roots off. So today what we're going to do is trim them up just a little bit more. If you notice on the bottoms of the beetroots there's little fine hairs, and sometimes dirt and stuff can get stuck in those spots. So we're just going to trim those off, and any extra bits of leaf that are sticking out too. We're not going to bother about peeling them or anything. We're just going to cook them with their skins on and cook them whole too. So here we go. Because they're a whole lot easier to peel without the skins on. So we're just going to pop all of those beets, doesn't matter big or small, we'll just cook them all until the biggest one's done. Alright, now we've put a fair bit of water into the pot so that they're almost covered, but they don't actually have to be covered. So we're just going to put that on there, don't need to add anything to it, no salt, no nothing, and we'll just cover it up and let that cook for probably an hour. If there's really big beets in there, you might have to go a bit longer. Just give them a prick with a fork and see if they're getting soft enough. Okay. So about an hour later, we're going to check and see if they are cooked. And the fork slides in easily. So they are done. The next step is to pour off the hot water and run cold water over them to help them cool off quicker. When you pour off the hot water, save some of it to use in the vinaigrette later. You could actually save more than that if you wanted to. And then run cold water over the beets to cool them off quicker. Okay, so the next step is to slip all the skins off the beetroot once they're cool enough to handle. And I have already done that. And then once the skins are off, then you can slice them or dice them, whichever you prefer. And I'm heating mine back up again because they had cooled off a lot. So I'm going to bring them back to the boil and put the lid on that and make sure they're good and hot. Now, while those are coming back to the boil, I also have some bottling jars in a frying pan, and I'm going to put those on to come to the boil too. What that does is it makes sure the jars are nice and hot and the lids are nice and hot, ready to put the hot stuff into the jars. It also acts as a bit of a sterilizer too, to make sure there's no bugs from having them sit in the cupboard. Now, the next thing we're going to do is to make the vinaigrette. And I'm going to put this back on the stand. Okay, there we go. And what we're going to do now is put a cup of the beetroot juice in there. It doesn't have to be beetroot juice, it can be just plain water if you didn't save any from cooking the beets, but it helps with the color and the flavor if you do reuse the juice. Right, so that's a cup of beetroot juice, and then 2 cups of sugar, or is it 1 cup? Okay, 1 cup of sugar. I was going to double the recipe and then decided not to. Okay, so and a little bit more. Okay, and a half a teaspoon of pickling salt. I don't have pickling salt, and I'm not sure exactly what the difference is. I just use regular salt. Half a teaspoon. Okay. And then 2 cups of white vinegar. That's 1. And we're going to bring this mixture to the boil too, to dissolve the salt and sugar and make everything blend together and make sure it's boiling hot when we pour it into the jars. Right, I don't usually cook much with vinegar, but for this recipe, it needs it. Okay, so we're going to stir that as it heats and comes to the boil, just to make sure everything dissolves properly. The beetroot has come to the boil, so I'll give that just a few more minutes to make sure it's heated all the way through, and you can see the fry pan is bubbling where the jars and the seals are. Okay, so once all of the jars and the beets and the vinaigrette are all hot and boiling, then you can take one jar at a time from the hot water and spoon the beets into it. Use the scoop to fill it with vinaigrette all the way to the top, and then put one of the seals on the jar with one of the rings. Tighten it down as tight as you can get it, and then put it aside to cool off and seal. The last of the beets I actually put in a container to go in the fridge with the last of the vinaigrette. So I got 2 pint jars of bottled beets and some to go in the fridge